from the College by the Lake, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Local, regional, national, and international guests discussing the issues and topics affecting the way you live are on Forum, the North Idaho College Public Forum, with your host and moderator, political scientist, Tony Stewart.
I am most pleased to welcome you to the Public Forum. Today we're going to start a very special series that's going to last for several weeks. I'm very excited about this series, and a lot of people have given efforts to make this happen. Our topic over the next few weeks in this special series is entitled A Search for the True Meaning of Human Rights, Conversations with College Students. As many of you know, I teach at the college level, and I'm very, very interested in the viewpoints of college students, and I think this series will bring out so many, many diverse viewpoints as we interview students from several regional colleges and universities of this area. On today's program, I'm very pleased to welcome 9 students that go to the Spokane Community College system. 5 of those guests today are from Spokane Community College. The other 4 are from the Institute for Extended Learning, both the Spokane and the Newport campuses. Students, welcome to our program. It's a pleasure having you here. I've had an hour and a half before the interview to meet with you, and I have really enjoyed our conversations. And I know you're taking this entire afternoon as we take the program to be with us away from your studies and away from other things that you might be doing, and I thank you very much. As I start this questioning today, I want to ask each of you a little bit about yourself, and as I do that, to also get right into the question of what this search for the true meaning of human rights happens to be from your perspective. And in doing that, you can discuss with us your own personal experiences or what you've observed both in this country or other places, because we have a couple of students with us from other countries, and we're pleased to have you here. Ben, I'd like to start the conversation with you today from Spokane Community College. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself and what your dreams are?
My name is Ben Esparza. I go to Spokane Community College. My aspirations are to go into the business computer field, programming field. That's what I'm going to school for. I graduate this June. And hopefully on into bigger and better things, possibly what they call the killer app. And if I get there, then obviously financial stability.
Ben, I'm going to bring you out front on the question first, as I've already given the title. As you sat here with us this afternoon, how would you define the meaning of human rights? We use other terms, civil rights, individual rights. What does that concept mean to you?
Human rights are the rights given to any one of us that basically I feel it would be the way that I would want to be treated by any other human being on the face of the earth. So the human rights that I portray to someone else would be the same ones that I would want to be given myself. And
in dealing with that from a philosophical viewpoint, your comments were eloquent. Are you given those rights by law or by government, or are they something that are under what we might call natural rights, that it's not something given to you? If something's given to you, isn't it a privilege, whereas a right is something you're guaranteed as a human being? How would you respond to that comment?
I don't think it would be something that I would be guaranteed. It's up to each individual to be responsible for the way he acts. Hopefully everybody takes into account how they would feel if someone was treating them the way they are treating someone if they were doing so badly. So it would be something within oneself to regulate and police, in a sense. They would definitely have to take a good look at themselves.
Thank you very much. We'll be coming back to you a little bit later, Ben, as we will all the students. And I want to move now to our next guest. And this guest is going to school here, as I've indicated, but is from another country. And Ruben, welcome to the program. We're happy to have you here. And would you do the same thing as Ben did, introduce yourself and tell us something about yourself?
My name is Ruben Mondiwa. I am from Zimbabwe, which is in the southern part of Africa. And I'm here going to college, and I'm doing my liberal arts. I'm majoring in marketing and computer science. So after that, I hope to get into business of my own. And I'm the president of the International Students club that is at SCC.
Well, thank you. That's commendable, and therefore I know you have a lot of conversation with other students. I'm going to ask you two parts of the question. Also, again, I would like to give you the opportunity to give us your viewpoint of what is human rights or civil rights as you perceive it.
I think basically when we talk of human rights, civil rights, we are talking about the right for a person to do what, I mean, like right to breathe, right to vote, right to have anything that another person is having, that, I mean, anything that doesn't infringe your freedom. I think basically that's what we talk about when we are talking of human rights, is we are leaving a space for that person to breathe, a space for that person not to feel as if he's in jail. So I believe that human rights, if we are talking about it in civil rights, we are talking about the freedom, the independence of that person.
Thank you. And in asking you somewhat the same question, Ben, as we view different countries, and you have obviously traveled, being from another part of the world, some countries have not been kind and generous to their people, totalitarian systems where rights have been taken away or denied. In other parts of the world with democracies, the emphasis is very much stressing that this is a birthright. How would you view, is a right something that is yours as you come into this world, or is it something granted from somewhere?
Myself, I come from Zimbabwe, and we have a president by the name of Robert Mugabe. Our president is a dictator, and we don't have, like, people are not allowed to have, like, freedom of press. They are not allowed to criticize the government, even the president himself. If they do those things, they're jailed. I mean, they're put in prison. Sometimes they disappear. And we don't have, I mean, like even the markets. I mean, you are talking the market economy. It's very much controlled by the government. So there isn't much freedom to do, I mean, whatever you feel like doing.
So there is, in that situation, a lack of respect for the concept as we have defined it today.
Yeah, in that situation, I mean, the government decides what freedom is to you, and their definition of freedom is quite wrong and quite contrary to what I've seen here in the United States.
Yes. If time allows us on this show, I would like to have you make some comparisons. If not, the news is that we will have all of you back next week, which we're pleased, before we move to the other series with other colleges. But this time, I want to move to our next guest. And again, Ruben, thank you for being here and your comments. And Jamie, you're also an international student, and would you introduce yourself?
Well, my name's Jamie Null. I'm also from Zimbabwe, Africa. I'm over here to study for a horticultural degree. I plan to go home and grow flowers on the farm, intensive flower production for export. And I'm just very happy to be in America. It's a great opportunity for myself.
And you both have been here for some time, and so both you and Ruben and can make some comparisons. Again, I want to get from all the students, from my topic, a search for the true meaning of human rights. What is the true meaning of human rights for you, Jamie?
I think, personally, I think that the true meaning of human rights is something that is given to you when you're born. It's your freedom and your rights as any human being would have. I think you should be able to do certain things freely without any consequences, and I think there should be certain limits to that. But I think it's up to each human being to enforce these rights for other human beings as well as themselves.
So you are supportive of having legislation to protect people from abuse or discrimination?
Definitely.
Well, I thank you again. I just appreciate those comments very much. And I'm going to now move to our next guest, who's also at the same institution, Spokane Community College. And Shauna, welcome to the program. And would you introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. I'm Shauna Collins. I go to SCC. I'm currently studying my general required classes for admission to Eastern as into their speech pathology program. I am currently also working with the Student Awareness League. I'm their president, and this is a great topic for us and something that we firmly believe in. first of all, what I think human rights is something that everybody is, as Jamie said. We are all born equally, and when we are born, we are created with our rights and our dignity. This is something that, yes, we as Americans and as a society or a nation need to control and keep a hold of. I think that in different times we may be losing touch of our rights and responsibilities. I think really my approach is that everybody is equal and we need to treat each other as such.
And your work that you're doing and with your organizations is an effort to promote that and enhance it within our society?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very, very much.
Mm-hmm.
And again, one of your peers is here next to you, also from Spokane Community College, and we'd like to welcome Kermetta and have you to introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Kermetta Hoffman. I am going for my bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I'll finish at SEC in June and then carry on. I'm also with the Student Awareness League for Human Rights, and pretty well known throughout the whole school as ASC Senator and Drama Club and kind of all of it. For the question of human rights, what it means to me is that all human beings, no matter where they're born, are born free and equal in dignity and in rights, and that would give them the right to the pursuit of happiness and liberty. And I think that should be strongly, strongly encouraged, and I think that more people should voice their opinions toward that.
I'm really glad you brought that up. I think I am correct to state that as you look at documents around the world addressing human rights, there's common language about freedom and equality and so forth. But the phrase you use, pursuit of happiness, that the first time I believe that appeared in a formal written document was the Declaration of Independence.
Yes.
And so I'd like to have you elaborate upon that. That is, if one is denied certain freedoms or is denied equality of opportunity, does that seriously endanger one's pursuing happiness if one is controlled by some institution, organization that does not recognize those principles?
I think if an individual knows the difference between right or wrong, they themselves are going to affect whether their pursuit of happiness is affected or not. I think that if they, anytime somebody would, of course, do the wrong thing, no matter that is the choice you're taking to have your your rights taken away from you. You still have the right to life, though.
Unless you live in a totalitarian society like Hitler's, where your life might even be taken for exercising.
Right.
Thank you, Kermetta. We appreciate that very much. Now I'm going to invite to the program the 4 students that come from the Institute for Extended Learning, which is also part of the Spokane Community System, and 2 of you are from Newport, and the other 2 are from Spokane. Welcome. And Terry, may we start with you introducing yourself, and again, we'll pursue this search for true meaning of human rights.
My name is Terry Savage, and I've graduated through the women's program, 3 different courses, went through a non-technical course of civil engineering tech and then liberal arts, and now work in the community at a local utility. Regarding civil rights or human rights, I know that recently there was address through the United Nations regarding the fact that there have been written up documents for the rights of all humans, yet the noted point that came, and excuse me, I don't remember her name, that was explaining that it's really each government that determines whether they will allow those rights. My personal view is that I know that there's many human governments that have tried to exercise for many years human rights or give human rights, or there are those, as you pointed out, dictators that can take those away. And my view is that it's going to take our Creator and His kingdom to be able to bring about those things for all humans.
You mentioned the United Nations, and in December, in fact on December the 10th, around the United States and other parts of the world, they were celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that Eleanor Roosevelt chaired the committee when they put those together, the United Nations. And again, it's been a dialogue around the world concerning what we're talking about here today. Thank you very much, Terry. We appreciate your comments, and we're going to move to another member of the Institute, or has been there. And Judy, welcome to the program, and we'll follow the same format.
My name is Judy Knowles, and I am a graduate of Change Points, a program through the Extended Learning.
Could you briefly explain what Change Points are?
Change Points is a program for women who have had some sort of reversal and are planning to go back, maybe out into the work field again, maybe for the first time, but it's very supportive and helps one to get back in the community. I'm also a graduate of Summit Educational Services, where I now teach computers. It's a computer school. I am a mother of 2 and a grandmother of 4, which makes me very interested in human rights and what will be the future. I believe that there are just some very basic words that describe human rights. Freedom, of course, security, opportunity, and those type of things are the things I'd like to see my grandchildren have available to them without a threat.
You're illustrating one of the great growths of higher education, particularly with the change in society and all these recognitions that were slow in coming about, for example, assisting what we call the non-traditional student, and how that can affect not only getting certain training, but also certain knowledge that you can take back both to your family and to society. So I think you're a beautiful example of what we're talking about. And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I would suggest that isn't this part of the human rights not only experiment and our destiny, but also comes under the category of human rights?
Yes, it does. I think that there are many avenues available now that perhaps were not available before. But I think that one of the most important parts is the participation and the support of women who are really moving a little more to the forefront. I think there's a lot to be done yet, but there's a lot of courage there to tap into, and helping one another is a real, just a wonderful, wonderful plan and idea that groups such as Change Point have brought into being.
Judy, thank you. And if I have time, I'll come back to you. You bring another word to mind for me, and that is self-esteem and self-respect and dignity, which, as a political scientist, I would contend is recognized in the 9th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Anything we forgot and left out as far as the specific words are there. And so you certainly have made me think about that. I'd move to your peer who's next to you now, and that is Sherry. And Sherry, thank you for being with us. And again, we give you the same opportunity.
It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Sherry Wells, and I'm the vice president of our Newport Center. It's a very small center in a small community, but I'm also an art teacher at a grade school. And through returning to school after 18 years and teaching art, I've had the opportunity to see how on a small scale we as human beings have lost touch with how one person can make a difference. The attitude that the children have and the adults have is sometimes we get caught up in our day-to-day living and we forget that as individuals we make up a collective that makes the difference. And the attitude that the younger children have is changing. They're not seeing shades of color or anything like that. And I basically follow a old philosophy my grandmother had taught me, and that's your rights end where my nose begins. So.
Yeah. We thank you, Sherry. And just a quick follow-up, and that is that when you talk about young people, one of the things happening that they're having much more exposure to the entire world through modern communication technology, and they have more of appreciation that there are differences in the world.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. very much so. And I think they have a lot more to offer than what we give them credit for. And in a small community, we have to band together to make a difference. So I think we have a slight advantage.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your comments. And we have one more guest today that's also from your same institute, and we're very pleased to have him, and that is Josh. And Josh, would you share with us who you are and your philosophy?
Well, I'm Josh Saker, and I'm from Newport with Sherry. And my philosophy on human rights and civil liberties and all that is that they're probably two different subjects when you speak of both. Human rights being the right to basically choose who you want to be, who you are, without having any outside infringement upon that. Like if you wanted to go to school, you'd be able to go to school just because, you worked up to it. And also that with civil liberties, I think that's more of dealing with like the outside group, how you treat people and how you'd like to be treated. And
we get, there's both the issue of civil rights and the word of civil liberties. When we get into civil liberties, you're talking about such First Amendment questions as free speech and free press, which is a freedom. Instead of going down the line like I did then, I'm not going to do that each time. I either this week or next week when you're back, it was important to the viewers to know something about you. I'm going to throw out some questions and just have different people to deal with that, and then I'll throw a different question out so you'd all now I don't have to answer the same question. But maybe someone would like to volunteer and give our camera people time to get to you when I throw the question out. But the opposite of human rights is discrimination. And there are three terms often used dealing with this. We hear about prejudices and bigotry, and we hear the term discrimination. And from that perspective, and certainly we've all witnessed that on this planet as human beings, who would like to come forth and address what those terms mean to you and what you've observed? Any of those terms, prejudice, bigotry, discrimination. I recently interviewed an author. He was just so excellent on this. He had taken students around the country, and he wrote a book about this whole question. Some of his comments were very powerful, but I'd like to hear from you. Who would like to start with this? Ben, it's like we're coming back to you now, and
sure, why
I
not?
appreciate that, and share with us your thoughts on that. And the rest I'd be thinking about someone else who'd like to address this question.
Well, expanding on what I was saying earlier, to me, prejudice is a dislike of anything. And unfortunately, as human beings, we are all going to have prejudice. No matter how much you deny the fact, there is always going to be something that you do not like. If you have a like for something, then you're going to have a dislike for its opposite. In dealing with that, that's the issue, I think, more so than anything else, is how each individual deals with his prejudices. If it's his own individual prejudice, he has to take care of it within his own realm. But as soon as he leaves that and is interacting with any other individual, then he must respect who they are, what they are, and not let his prejudice dictate how he acts towards them or anybody else.
And in my title, A Search for the True Meaning of Human Rights, so I hear you saying that you have to look inwardly, you have to be honest with yourself, and you have to deal with any problems that you may have if you want to enhance this question that's before us here.
Most definitely, yeah. Like I say, just because of being a human being and having a like for something, there's always going to be the opposite. There's always going to be the dislike. So you will probably interact with people who have similar likes. And then the other people that do not have similar likes are going to be another group. But you should not have any inability to interact with that other group just because of the dislikes and likes. They have other things. There's more than one issue that makes up a human being. So with those other things, you can still interact with them and do things on a civil manner with those people, so long as it's not the one thing that you totally contest. And even if it is what you contest, you can have conversations of your differences, why you do not like as...
And out of that can come understanding.
Yes.
Who else would like to address this particular issue Terry, we'll come to you, and then I believe Ruben wants to deal with it. Terry, let me put it in a little bit of different context. This professor, Dr. Waller at Whitworth College, was talking about this, and he says when you look at bigotry and prejudice, it is a belief or attitude that one has toward others that's negative. It's based on oftentimes much false information. But when you see it in laws, then what he said is you are by law, discrimination is legalizing or attempting to legalize one's prejudice. And so with that extra introduction, I would let you share your thoughts.
Well, I was thinking of Gandhi's support of Christ's philosophy of loving your neighbor as yourself. And it points out that against that there is no law. So that really it boils down to if we care to love for, look out for others, give consideration as to what would be of their benefit versus what we would want for our own, then we have guaranteed freedom to everyone.
Thank you. Ruben, I just got to see we have less than 2 minutes left, but we'll get on this and we'll come back next week and we're going to do some specific areas, but in about 40 seconds, give us your comment.
I think all of the three words, basically mean the same, but I want to a little bit to be different with him a little bit in terms of how people disliking things. It's not right to dislike another person because of maybe he has got a different color. Because just imagine if this world had only one color of a flower, what it will look like. And these different colors that we have in human beings shows that God is a very creative artist. Who put all these different colors, which makes the world very beautiful. And who are you to say this color is not good? So that kind of dislike is not good.
And so it'd be like we who like ice cream, we don't want just vanilla ice cream all the time, we want variety.
Yeah.
And you've been so eloquent in saying that. I have a signal that we're out of time, ladies and gentlemen, from Spokane Community College System, but we're going to have you back next week, and then I'm going to talk about some particular areas where discrimination takes place. I've really enjoyed this program with you, and ladies and gentlemen, I would invite you to be with us again next week when we will pick up our second week on a search for the true meaning of human rights, conversation with college students. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
The North Idaho College Public Forum was videotaped live from the studios of Instructional Technology on the campus of North Idaho College for viewing at this more appropriate time. We invite you to join us again next week for another all-new edition of the North Idaho College Public Forum on this public television station. From the College by the Lake, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Local, regional, national, and international guests discussing the issues and topics affecting the way you live are on Forum, the North Idaho College Public Forum, with your host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart.
I am most pleased to welcome you back to part 2 of our series entitled A Search for the True Meaning of Human Rights, Conversations with College Students. For any of our viewers who were not with us last week, in part 1, we had on our program 9 students from the Spokane Community College System, and we're pleased to have those students back again this week to continue this important series. Following this week, in the future, we will have other college students from universities and colleges in the inland Northwest, and we look forward to those programs too. On last week's program, we defined such terms as what is human rights, or civil rights, and we even discussed a little bit about civil liberties, and we got the viewpoints of our students on those issues. We also talked about prejudice and bigotry and discrimination, and those were terms that we used in a very general way. This week, as we welcome our guests back, we're going to talk about particular communities or categories that have faced discrimination. When I say communities, I mean, for example, the Hispanic community, the African American community. We'll deal with issues like race, color, religion, national origin, age, disability, sexual orientation, gender, and so forth. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our program. If I can turn around to greet you, we're happy to have you back. And as we ended last week's program, I said to you after we went off the air that I was very touched by your sincerity, and I really mean that, and so let's continue. This week, instead of going down the row and just having each one of you to deal with the same question, I'm going to throw out some questions and ask you to volunteer, and all 9 of you do not have to answer the same question, so we can get more issues in, and secondly, I think you would feel more comfortable if you don't have to be the 9th person to deal with the same question. As I just introduced to our audience, I believe that human rights covers many areas or communities within society, globally speaking, as well as within the United States. And so may I start with race and color and national origin. That is an area that we've dealt with in this country in particular in some very, very significant ways in this century, and actually last century too, of course, with such things as the Civil War and the abolition of slavery, and then addressing segregation and other questions. To you, as a group of students living in 1999 in Spokane, Washington, how would you address the magnitude of this problem? You could either address the progress we've made or other problems that still exist. And you can do that on a personal basis as well as what you see in policy or in law. That's a long, long introduction, but who would like to take that area first for me and deal with that? Ruben, you want to address that question, and then we'll ask 1 or 2 others to address that too, and then move to another category.
Yeah, this is according to my own experience. Since I came here from Zimbabwe, I've seen that there is, the young people are much more accommodating than the older people when you move out of college. Race is not any topic of discussion to them. But as you go outside the campus, you see, those kind of things, like race being a topic of discussion and being an issue. But when you're around the campus, it's not a major issue, to them at all. There is no difference to many of them.
Well, thank you, Ruben. And let me follow up on this and make sure I am understanding properly that when you leave the campus and you're in the general community and you meet people of all ages and backgrounds, you're saying that you experience more acceptance or more celebration of this community of human rights than with younger people?
What I'm saying is that there is an acceptance that is there, outside the community, but the treatment is kind of different. Some of them will kind of look down on you, which is different, when you are at a campus. Everyone looks at you as you are. And when you get out of the, we are in the community now, the people, they may not discriminate you or anything, but the treatment is kind of somehow different.
But when you're outside of the campus, do some groups or ages treat you different than other groups do?
Yeah, especially, the young group, I don't think that they have a problem even outside the campus. But if you meet the older generation, there is that kind of, difference. I don't know why, but I have found out, from my own personal experience, that it's that way.
Okay. The laws and the policies that have changed to combat discrimination have been in place most of the life of the young people, where they have not the older ones. That might be one of the experiences you're having. I really appreciate you addressing that question. Who else would like to address race and color and national origin? It is one of the big areas. Sean, I see you indicating that you'd like to do that. And again, for those who weren't with us last week, would you also tell them the organization that you belong to, that you work in this area?
Yes, I belong to the Student Awareness League at the Spokane Community College. I'm also the president of the club, so we're very excited. And I would like to just kind of add with Ruben that I have seen that we are making some change. Just recently on Martin Luther King Day. I attended the march that was held here in Spokane from the sports arena all the way into downtown to around the Spokane Club area. And I will say, not that I'm very old and I've been around for a very long time, but I know that when Martin Luther King was doing so much of his work, there weren't a lot of white people attending those marches with him. And I was very excited to see the amount of cultural diversity that attended this march. And I was very pleased and very proud of our community because so many people did show up, and I don't think there was more of one than another race. And that tells me that there is hope and that we are persevering, we are moving ahead.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Is there one more person who would like to address this particular? Josh, you would like to speak to the issue, and I appreciate that. And again, we're dealing with race, color, and national origin.
I think as a whole, though, we are all starting to notice the difference and accept the differences, and as far on, because companies are becoming more global now. You know, there's no one country. Cars aren't being made in the USA anymore; they're being made all around. A lot of companies are expanding globally, and with the internet and so forth, people are able to see their differences and notice them and accept them and learn from each other.
That brings what I like about questions and answers is that you say things that produce other questions. And I want to do one other thing that particularly is pertinent to this category, although it's very important to the other categories too. And some of my very good friends that work with us in human rights activity have expressed a lot of interest in this concept, is that as we moved from slavery to segregation, to the end of segregation, and to civil rights legislation and changes in many people's attitudes and policies, we moved to something called tolerance. And now beyond that, many people are saying, I had a really neat person today say to me, I don't want to be tolerated. I want to be celebrated and accepted. There is a difference. I see, Ben, you're shaking your head. Would you like to take on this concept and explain your views in that area?
Well, as you mentioned, I want to be accepted, and I want to be accepted for who I am, not what I am. More than likely, most individuals who look at me cannot figure out my ethnic origin. And just to be upfront with it, I'm half Japanese and half Mexican. Very difficult to determine that. And because of that, I have not experienced a lot of discrimination. I have some minor instances. I've even experienced it within my minority groups. If I'm with a friend, like an African American, and we go to some engagement that he is involved with his culture, I would go in and I would feel on the outside a little bit. Until you get to know people, and then once you get to know people, all those barriers really actually do drop. So from my experiences, what I wanted to say basically is open up your mind and get to know other people, and you'll see that the race or the religion or any of that really doesn't make a difference.
I think you've done something extremely important. You've taken a key and unlocked a mystery for us, and that is that because of your ethnic and racial background, when people that tend to be prejudiced, cannot identify you, they have a hard time being prejudiced. But when we can lock someone into a category, then the prejudice increases. I would suggest to you, Ben, that you have given very powerful proof to the irrationality of the prejudice, bigotry, and I thank you for that. I'd like to move to the issue of gender. And again, I'm frustrated we won't get through everything in 30 minutes, but I particularly want to address to the women of the panel the issue of gender. Again, we've had that struggle, and there's a history there in this country, as other countries. 1920, again, the right to vote, and it was not till the 1960s that there was some significant legislation dealing with job discrimination based on gender. And I just would love to get your ideas, your experience, your views, and who would like to start that first for us? Yes, Terry, we'll come to you. And again, this, like the other issue, is a community that has faced some real difficulties, and share with us.
Well, I appreciate being able to go through Change Point. That, again, is part of the community colleges that help women that are coming to a change in their lifetime, particularly a marital change or where they're facing the workforce again. And for my particular situation, I went into a field that is predominantly male-oriented. There is still the glass ceiling, and it is difficult. I've recently put in for a position to be able to broaden my horizons, to get more experience. And generally, the male gender is expressed as to who would be hired. And you have to work within those parameters and sometimes help people open their minds a little bit to know that there are other options. So again, a lot of times the person has to play their own cheerleading group, I guess you might say, because you don't want to step on toes, and at the same time you don't want to discourage or close doors that could have been opened by someone else. So if you use finesse, or if you use the ability to present other ideas, it does more to widen that opening, if there is one started.
Thanks, Terry. Other comments from the panel on the gender question? Yes, please, Judy. Again, you in the first show we had last week, you indicated some things that also fit to this particular issue.
Well, I have about 23 years of work experience, and I have managed offices and worked in mostly office situations. I believe that the way that one approaches these changes is the most important part of the issue. I sometimes think that the manner in which the 70s, I was at work then, I could see why it was difficult for men to embrace the women as they came in with their banners and all of that. And I felt that it was threatening, you know. But I think there have been a lot of improvements made in that area. I don't know when we'll reach the point where women earn the same wages as men for the same job. I think they're certainly more accepted in the marketplace. But I do think attitude has so much to do with success.
You also said something very powerful. I'm just really enjoying this. Maybe we'll continue this next year, find you and come back to do more. But Judy, you're indicating progress, and you recognize that. But you're also saying that the crusade's not over. And statistics do show in this country, as other countries, that men and women who do identical jobs, same amount of experience and tenure, don't always get the same pay by any means. So that's an example of issues to still be dealt with. One other person on gender. Yes, Sherry?
I've noticed in the past few years that things have improved somewhat, but I think it's unfortunate that companies have what they call a minority quota that they have to fill. Just the fact that this classification exists shows how much further we have to go. For instance, in the lumber industry has to, at lumber mills, they have to hire so many women per so many men. And it's unfortunate that they have to be told to do that. So that shows how far we need to progress further, because it shouldn't be an issue. No one should have to be told.
But you're suggesting because of, again, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but you're suggesting because of past practices in education, job training and jobs and housing and so forth, that we, like other countries, create this situation. But did I hear you say you wish the day will come when the application will be so uniform that we won't have to address the question the way we do now?
Exactly. The fact of being male or female should not be an issue. The fact of qualifications and your ability to fill it, that should be the issue.
I'm going to go over to Jamie, who's also from another country, and he hasn't spoken on the program yet today. And maybe we can do a little comparison, not only with, you might identify for the viewers again where you're from and here, but not just those two countries. You can deal with other countries. As someone who has a chance to look at it internationally, how would you address any of these two issues, Jamie?
I think America has come a long way in addressing this problem, or if you do consider a problem. considering that Zimbabwe is, I think, a long way behind. From what I've seen, ladies take a stance early on, and they kind of fall into the secretary line or the housewife kind of thing, and there hasn't been much of a sort of a crusade, as you mentioned earlier. There's as there has been here, and I think there's a lot to be learned from what's going on here. So, from where I stand, I think there's a lot of good things about this place. What's going on here?
And you see progress or changes and how people not only treat one another, are you saying, but also the opportunities they have?
Definitely. I think American women have a lot more opportunity in all aspects of life, business, homemaking. There's reversal of roles all over the place.
Okay. I'm going to go another category, and Kermetta, I'm going to start with you on this one. I hope that we get everyone in. I believe we have on this last couple of rounds. Everybody's spoken up to now. Kermetta, another area that's of great interest to this pursuit that we're doing on this series, that has to do with disabilities. And before the show, we were all talking about probably the most expansive and significant piece of legislation in this country was in 1964, the Civil Rights Act. 1964 dealt with a lot of areas, a lot of titles of that all. But then the next most comprehensive law was the passage of Americans with Disability Act. And so that's another community that is been brought into the process and discussion. And with the organization that you belong to, like Shauna and others, would you share some thoughts about what you think is going on with individuals who are classified in that community of disability?
I think that our community has come a long way with the disabilities and the services that they have for the people with disabilities. There are a number of people out there that don't appear to us, such as myself, that have disabilities, but we do not appear that way to the public. And I think that they need to come a little bit farther in that area. There are many people affected with a wide range of different disabilities, and it's just not seen to the public eye. And so, of course, a lot of times they're not generated the same services that people with obvious disabilities are. So I think that, but we are on a good track, especially within our community, more than say California. Washington.
It's being addressed. And those less observable disabilities can also greatly impact you if certain services and processes aren't available to you. Mm-hmm. Who else would like to speak to the disability issue? Please, Shauna.
I would like to say something on more towards it's a good thing. I served 3 years in the Marine Corps and was hurt very badly, where the Marine Corps did not acknowledge this injury, but the VA has come through for me. And in less than a year, when I started my paperwork, I was in school, settled on a disability, and they're paying for my career. And I have to say that I'm very pleased with the treatment that has come out of it. I had a long road and a very long battle while I was in the military fighting this issue, but actually somebody has stood up and said, we're going to help you. And for me, that's wonderful. And I feel also that I have been afforded a great many chances and opportunities, just as somebody with obvious disabilities. As with everybody, you just have to know, and you have to start researching or asking what opportunities are available to you. And people are pretty accommodating.
Mm-hmm. So. Sherry, did you want to add to that?
My mother worked in the medical field for many years, and she also suffered a disability. But because of the injury and the progression we've made in the medical field, she also went through discrimination because she was a woman. The male doctors told her she was not injured, stop it, go back to work. And she had to fight for 2 years before receiving disability. And I think it's a shame that she had to face discrimination before she could even get to the issue of the disability.
It takes a lot of energy and a lot of extra time. I'm going to deal with age as an issue, and for those that we don't cover this week, for those students that I'll have next week, we'll cover others. I'm wanting my viewers to know that we're certainly not ignoring any of these communities on this series, but we just can't do them all in the same week. But dealing with age, and one reason why I want to bring up age today is that on our panel here today, we have great diversity in age, and we do in our college. I know Judy and you and I were talking about this before the program too. In college, we have students like 16, 17, 18, all the way up people in their 60s or 70s, and the mean age is often 28 or 30. And I think that it, in many ways, has become a mirror of society. That is, within the society, people of all ages are contributing. So I throw this out for whoever wishes to take it, is what we're doing on college campuses, is that enhancing, addressing this question? We've also now have federal legislation dealing with age discrimination. There have been some companies in this country that tried to lay off workers at age 40 or 45 after they've been there 20 years so they can maybe avoid some retirement benefits and so forth. And again, we've addressed that with legislation. What is your view or your experience or your recommendations for dealing with the category of age discrimination? Back to Kermetta.
I think that they have a long way to go, especially within the community colleges, for older people returning to school. Just recently I encountered a very difficult situation which has held me from returning back to school for a long time, and that was being math is a problem. Well, they just recently changed the math and made it that much harder and that many more math classes that you have to take before you can graduate. And this made it very difficult for a number of students, such as myself, that we're not way up there in age, but it has been a number of years since we've been to school. So you're indicating that because of the time that you've been out of school, you still may have to get through that level to meet your needs for your degree. But are you suggesting that the college should have some sensitivity to how to get you to that point where the 18-year-old may already be just coming out of high school? Right. Because when I graduated from high school, you didn't have to learn algebra. I mean, and I'm not sounding foreign. I took consumer math instead. So, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that I got out of high school. But I think that they not only need sensitivity, but they need to, for people that aren't majoring in math and going to use it a whole lot in their chosen career or chosen profession, then maybe the requirements shouldn't be so strict as to certain subjects that you need to take or they say you need. Now we're getting into the curricular ideas, and that's fine too. Who else? I see that Ruben wants to address this question, and I'm very pleased. And Ruben, would you share your thoughts on age discrimination?
Yeah, I'm going to look at it at a different point of view, comparing with my country. I think on age discrimination, when we are talking about school, we also have to involve the workplace as well, because in the job market, if you go there, like in my country, the retirement age is 60, and the year ahead that it was 65, but they're going to increase it to 67. So I mean, if in my country, most people don't go to school because they say, what's the use? I mean, because at 60, no one will be hiring me. And here as well, I mean, people, when they go to school, when they look at those factors that are put on the job market, that you are supposed to retire at this age and no one will be willing to retire you, I mean, to kind of employ you, then it will be a kind of a problem to them, I mean. So I think if this subject is to be addressed, then we have to, put off the lead that puts the limitation on the age that a person, I mean, should retire or should be employed. I mean, those kind of things, I mean, should be removed there, because they are kind of a barrier that is between that person and his age, I mean, and the education. He looks at the years that he's going to spend in school and the years that the government is putting that, I mean, at this age, you are supposed to retire, and the employers are looking at that. Then you are kind of at a disadvantage. So to address the situation, we have to also address, I mean, the age, I mean, the retirement age as well.
You're doing such an excellent job of revealing things that I haven't had a chance to see in some aspects. Mm-hmm. In this country, not only are they encouraging, because of Social Security problems and all, to raise the retirement to 67 or maybe later to 70, but we also have another law that says even if you reach retirement age, you don't force someone if they wish to continue to work. And so what you said to me, Ruben, is really interesting because of this policy in this country. It is affecting who goes to school and the wide range of age, whereas in another country, when you have earlier retirement, you have a less diverse campus population by age. And I really appreciate you making that point. I have a signal from our staff that we have less than 2 minutes to go, and I'm going to take that time in a special way and say to you that we've covered race and color and national origin, and we've covered disability, and we've covered age and gender. There are other categories we haven't covered. And I have other students coming in from other colleges and universities on next week's program, and we'll deal with those. And we'd invite you, since you're in this area, to watch those shows, as I'll have them to watch your shows. And so from this whole series, maybe we can get this all tied together on this topic that I am so serious about. And that has to do with what you have contributed so significantly to, and that is a search for the true meaning of human rights, a conversation with college students. And I just want to say before you leave me today that as long as I've dealt with this and it's interesting I'm in it, you've given me some new ideas, some new thoughts, some new avenues, and I really appreciate that. And I can be more effective with classes and so forth because of your contributions. Hope you'll take it back to your faculty and your staff, and Dr. Ron Bell, who helped me put this together, who's your interim CEO. I'll tell him how good you were, and I thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, be with us again next week at this same time, and we will continue this series on a search for the true meaning of human rights, conversation with college students. We shall continue with other students. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
The North Idaho College Public Forum was videotaped live from the studios of Instructional Technology on the campus of North Idaho College for viewing at this more appropriate time. We invite you to join us again next week for another all-new edition of the North Idaho College Public Forum on this public television station. From the College by the Lake, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Local, regional, national, and international guests discussing the issues and topics affecting the way you live are on Forum, the North Idaho College Public Forum, with your host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart.
I am most pleased to welcome you to our third program in a series entitled A Search for the True Meaning of Human Rights, Conversations with College Students. For you viewers who were not with us on the first 2 weeks, it was most stimulating and energizing for me to hear from college students about what I believe to be as important a topic that exists among human beings. On today's program, I'm so pleased to welcome students from various universities and colleges in our region. We have students from the University of Idaho, Washington State University, Gonzaga University, and North Idaho College. As we start the program today, I also want to welcome to the program the president of North Idaho College, Dr. Michael Burke. Dr. Burke, thank you for being with us today. We appreciate it very much, and I know from your background as a graduate at the University of Texas at Austin, and then the work you've had since then, how much you appreciate diversity. And thank you for coming and welcoming all these students from our regional colleges. And at this time, I would invite you to give us an opening statement.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Tony. I appreciate the opportunity. As a college president, I don't get nearly enough opportunity to interact with students in a forum like this, so I appreciate just being included today. I appreciate all the work that you've done bringing this group together from the representative colleges and the universities in the inland Northwest. From the short time I've been here, the issue of human rights is one I think that is very important in the inland Northwest, and North Idaho College, as well as its sister colleges and universities here today, have been in the forefront of advocacy for human rights. But from my perspective, it's not really a city issue or a regional issue even, or state issue. It's a national issue, and I really appreciate your willingness to spend the time that you do advocating for human rights.
Dr. Burke, thank you for that. And recently you gave a speech at North Idaho College, and I thought it was very eloquent on this topic. Would you take another minute or two to share with our students here today and our viewers that are watching, your perception or idea of how can we best advance the equality and dignity for all persons?
I think I took the opportunity in that speech to read from a line or two from William Butler Yeats, an English poet writing in the 30s during the rise of fascism and right before World War II. And if I can get the quote right, he said, the best lack all conviction while the worst are full of passionate intensity. And I think we're fortunate in that while perhaps certain elements of our culture still lack that same passionate intensity, the best of our society, I think, is really doesn't lack the kind of conviction that he expressed in that poem. There's an awful lot of personal conviction in the people in this region, I think, and the advocacy and the repeated willingness to advocate for human rights is very inspiring. I think that's what it's going to take.
Thank you so much, and we'll be back to you on our series that we're doing. I'm going to turn now to the students from North Idaho College. That's my home base, and you've been very wonderful to work in lots of things, such as the North Idaho College Human Equality Club. And Josh Buhner, we're going to start with you, since you are the president of the club, and you have spoken on this issue on a number of occasions, including at Gonzaga University. Josh, I would like to start with a question to you that the other three from North Idaho College that are with you there can respond to. When we deal with human rights, we deal with civil rights, and then of course we have questions like civil liberties, it deals with speech and press, all those kind of things, but particularly with the human rights, civil rights area. With experience you've had, and you've even been a victim yourself, what should we do? What would you recommend that needs to be done in society? And especially from the viewpoint of college students on college campuses.
Sure. Tony, since I have just a short period of time, I'll try to summarize this as best I can. This issue is so large. It's a massive issue, and it's something that not one of us or even all of us here today would be able to come up and give you a formula to solve this problem. But what needs to happen more on college campuses is we need to take a little bit more action, have more discussions. If you look at the 60s, college campuses were very active, and they spoke up very passionately about these topics. And college campuses in our region and even nationwide right now aren't having enough discussions. And bringing us here together today and some of the events that are going to be taking place later this spring with college students is one way, an avenue for us to start taking some action.
Thank you. Alina, would you like to also address the question? And from your perspective as someone who's had experience both in this country and in other countries, what advice would you give us today? And you're also active in the Human Equality Club, and we'd love to hear your input.
Right now it's kind of difficult for me to get to understand what exactly I have to say, so maybe you can throw the question to someone else.
Yeah, and just think about it from the terms of what would you recommend that we do to make life better for all of us, to treat one another the same and respect and celebrate our differences?
I think what we should do in that case is first we have to examine ourselves, our own attitudes, what we want and what we would expect others to do. I think that would be the first thing.
Well said, and it comes from with us out to society. Ben, who's next on our list here, is also the president of Student Advice. So Ben, you have a role and responsibility of leadership, which you've, by the way, handled with great success, and we commend you for that. You've been very good to work with us, and I'll never forget all the support you've given. What advice do you have, not only to the Student Advice North Idaho College, but all these other colleges and universities?
Well, I look at it, where we are right now in college is the best time to learn. It's a foundation, a base that we make for the rest of our lives, how we're going to deal with each other, and we learn to deal with each other as we interact with each other within our colleges. Learning to respect and that everyone deserves respect and dignity are keys to forming a foundation so that we can give others the civil liberties and understand the philosophy behind that. And I think it's sort of a grassroots effort. I think it starts young. I think education is key in understanding what those civil rights are and understanding what rights people should have.
There's a saying in politics that all politics is local, and so human rights is local, is it not?
Definitely.
That from the grassroots, then we would solve the problem if all communities would respond in that way. Well, Raj, you also have had experience both as a student at North College, and you come from another part of the world, and I know you have some ideas that we've shared before. What's your advice to our good viewers today, and particularly talk to students in colleges around the Northwest?
Well, first of all, I would like to mention that 4 years ago when I came to this country, the issue of First Amendment was an interesting subject to me, and to learn a lot about the freedoms you have in this country in terms of freedom of speech and press and liberty of expressing your own opinion and freedom of expressions and all that. It was interesting. So by the time I got here from being from Turkmenistan, one of the countries that comprised the former Soviet Union, I did not have actually any idea how the U.S. was and how the things happened in this country. So after I came, I learned a lot about the problems you have here in terms of racial problems, ethnicities, and stuff like that. So, and in terms of being a college student, I think bringing awareness to community where the colleges are located is a good idea, because through the young minds, people would really accept all those ideas.
So education is the answer to a lot of the problems.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to, education, and bring the awareness about equality and diversity, because in particular North Idaho is not a very diverse place, so I think the college students have to at least put somewhat of input into that.
But working through this group like we are here, you have a lot of diversity within the inland Northwest if we just tap it. I'm going to turn now to our friends from Gonzaga University, and today we have 4 students from Gonzaga which have already gone through that process of the baccalaureate degree, and we have 4 students in the law school, and I have a lot of fondness for Gonzaga and have worked there on a lot of projects in the last few years. And Beverly, we're going to start with you, Beverly Gordon, who I must give credit to. She was so wonderful to bring this together, and Beverly has helped us other things, and we commend you for all you do, Beverly. My question for the 4 students, I'm going to tap the advantage we have here with your expertise that you have developed and are continuing to develop. We have a debate in our society oftentimes about human rights, saying, legislation will not change people's hearts, and that you have to wait for and be patient for people to change. Others say no, that legislation like the great civil rights legislation in the 1960s or court cases can make a difference. So my question for all 4 of you from your perspective is, what role is there for government and in laws and court cases to change society to help with discrimination, whether it does or does not change the heart of a particular person? Beverly, if you would give us your view on public policy.
Well, I think laws play a very key role in promoting diversity, because in a lot of places, I come from Alabama, so I know some people are familiar with Jim Crow laws that blacks, African Americans, and other minorities had to deal with in the 60s. So if it hadn't been for our Constitution and the ability of different lawyers, different great attorneys such as Thurgood Marshall coming into play and promoting civil rights and changing the laws of the South, then we would not have had the advantages that a lot of our other counterparts have today. So I think the government plays a very important role in promoting diversity and promoting civil rights as well as human rights amongst the nation and other countries.
If we just waited for all hearts to change, we'd still have segregation, would we not?
Sure. Yep.
Laura, maybe we come to you and you address this question too about the role of government in public policy.
I don't think the government can legislate morality. I think that the laws are important. I think that while you can't change somebody's heart, you can force them through the law to comply. And I think if that happens often enough, or if it's in the media enough through the courts and through legislature, that people will find that certain behaviors are not acceptable. And I think the slow process through the judicial system will actually make changes like it did in the 60s through the civil rights. And if you look back on it as a continuum, then it has changed quite a bit across the timeline.
Thank you, Laura. And Travis, I want to play upon what Laura said as a bridge for you. Even though the law may not change someone's heart, how would you respond to the fact that law can require people to leave people alone or not to deny them access to facilities or education?
Sure. Well, I think in the 70s and late 60s, we began to have this cult of the individual where we thought, okay, my rights as an individual are more important than the rights of, let's say, an oppressor or somebody who's doing something to me that is wrong or against, the Constitution. So I think it's important to keep that in mind, and the fact that while you're trying to promote your individual liberties, that you're not forcing that onto somebody else. And the important thing that the legislators play that role in that is to ensure that that doesn't happen, that laws are equally applied to all individuals, and it's one thing to say that this law makes us equal, it's another to actually do it. That's pretty much what I think.
Thank you, Travis. Larry, would you add on as a law student yourself, how do you perceive your future and others and how we use law to protect individuals from discrimination?
Sure, Tony. I think laws can make a positive change, as we've seen with civil rights. The problem is with laws, there's always those that want to resist and break those laws. For example, it's one of the biggest differences between human rights and civil rights, in that civil rights are defined and bordered by laws. Human rights is a much broader umbrella that civil rights fall under. As we see with the UN trying to impose sanctions and armed forces on a nation concerning human rights, oftentimes you have this conflict between cultures and the UN. And so a lot of times the positive effects are minimal.
Well, it's really excellent that you would distinguish between civil rights and human rights. I think you're very much onto something. And the fact is that civil rights is much slower than the definition of human rights would ask for. Or do we categorize and very slowly by law change as we look at certain communities that have been discriminated against?
Well, I think human rights is yet to be defined. I think that's one of the reasons why we're here today with this program. And I think in part the world is trying to come to that idea of what human rights is. And you have all these different nations and different cultures and different ethics, and they're trying to come to themselves and define us. And the problem is you have so many that are on different spectrums, and oftentimes you have one country or one culture trying to impose it on another, and this is where the problem comes in.
Guess what Larry has done for us? He has built my bridge to the next question. I told you I like to be spontaneous, and Twila, I'm going to start with you and the University of Idaho students and the Washington State University student. He has indicated that civil rights, as I hear him talking, is defined rather specifically, and we only deal with certain categories, and then we sometimes expand those. But let's take his theory of human rights that we're trying to define worldwide and that it's much broader. We just recently celebrated the 50th anniversary of the United Nations Charter for Universal Human Rights that Eleanor Roosevelt worked on so much with others. Twila, let's start with you from the University of Idaho, and would you give us your concept and idea of what human rights would mean in the context of where Larry was taking us?
Human rights as opposed to civil rights?
Civil rights, something that's much broader. To you, if you had today the power and the ability to say for all the people of the world, here is what human rights means and should mean, what would you say?
It's wow, there's a lot there. It's really sweeping, broad sweeping actually.
Yeah.
I think to me it means that it's just the ability to live as you want to live, as a person sees fit. I mean, within normal bounds. I mean, as long as it's not hurting somebody else or affecting the way that they live, then I think that people should be free. I mean, feel free to express themselves, to live certain lifestyles, to practice certain cultures, however they say fit.
I think that's really well said, and if everyone lived by that would be a form of a golden rule, then we wouldn't have to worry about legislation. Krista, who's from Washington State University, welcome. Hi. And would you take this and carry it to your concept? And again, I would be appreciative if you could give some advice to college students in particular about your idea of where should we go in the end with human rights?
With human rights on a broad scale, I think we need to look at cultures and, like she said, look at cultures and try to find ways to respect individuals' needs and wants, and try to make people feel as if they have some control over their destiny, and that they can live as they wish to live without infringing upon the basic rights of others. And I would encourage college students to try to live in a way that doesn't infringe upon others and that creates a growth through awareness and education.
Thank you so much. And we'll come on down the line. Now, our next student is from University of Idaho, and we've got 4 in a row now from University of Idaho, and we'll ask each of you to share with us too. And Daniel, we'll start with you. What would you like to add, or what dimensions would you like to see that we could all become part of our daily lives?
Well, what I feel about human rights would be, I don't know, I guess, the basic rights every person has that's living, I mean, you have the right to live peaceably, wherever, however you want to. You have the right to walk to the store no matter what your color of skin is without somebody calling you a name, You have the basic right as any human does. I mean, just the right to live how you want no matter what religion you are, no matter your sexual preference, your color of your skin. Just basic rights that everybody deserves for being a human being. What I feel human rights is.
That's great. And Rasha, if you give us, another student from University of Idaho, if you give us your viewpoint, I'm trying to play upon what each one is saying. And Daniel gave us something very important to say, accept everyone. May I put it in another context? And you can still give us your definition of human rights, but we've heard for a long time now in human rights, let's be tolerant. A lot of people in civil rights saying that's moving too slow. To tolerate someone is very different from accepting them and celebrating them. And would you like to bring that into the conversation?
Sure. First of all, once we have achieved equal opportunity for all, then I can say we've achieved human rights. But also, we need to take a look at it and say, this person is judged by the color of their skin, therefore, you don't have this job. That's not fair. And people need to not only accept that we are different, but understand that it's okay to have these differences. And I'm not asking you to believe what I believe or believe what your neighbor believes, but to understand and accept that they do have that right.
Well said. I'm very proud of all of you. This is what I was looking for. And is it Zara?
Zara, yes.
Yes. Thank you for being here. And would you elaborate upon this too? And let me put it another way to you. And that is, I had a debate with someone over a religious matter, and I said, I can accept your religion and still hold to mine deeply. And this person said, no, you can't, because unless you can accept it this way, you're not going to heaven. You've got to do it one way. And so this whole area of civil rights, human rights, and so is it not possible to have total appreciation and celebrate someone and who they are and still be who you are? That's kind of another way of approaching the question to you, but carry it wherever you wish to go with it.
Sure. I think to answer your question, I believe you can. I am from the Islamic faith, and so living in America, of course, you don't see on the calendars where they have, the marking of Ramadan, which is the fasting month. You see now where, you have the Jewish holidays and the traditional Christian holidays, and now they're bringing in more of like Kwanzaa and other festivities. So I think it's important where you have the right to bring in your culture and your religion and then share it with people. And that's what we were taught to do as children growing up. However, I think there's also a limit where you can appreciate somebody's religion, by like giving Christmas gifts or, going to church with them. But then also I think it should be the other way around too, where they come in and they also appreciate your culture and your religion.
So you're saying you really don't have to forsake your beliefs to celebrate someone else's beliefs.
I don't think so.
They can be there together.
I think if you have the respect, and I think if you're open-minded, then that's okay. But when you're closed-minded, that's where I guess, where you run into problems.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Letha, we'll come to you next. And all of you are building these bridges, and so is it possible to really be a supporter of human rights and champion it unless you are open-minded?
I believe you need to be open-minded to support human rights. If you close your mind off to anything, there's no way you can accept someone else's belief, or not accept it, but at least, like you said, tolerate or appreciate. Some of my closest friends have vastly great, different backgrounds than I do, and I celebrate with them in their cultures, their holidays. Every once in a while, they help me learn part of their language, so if something important is going on, I can understand what's being said, and that's keeping my mind open to them. Even though I may not believe what they are, I am still helping them celebrate it.
Okay, to you, Jennifer. Every one of you has said something that gets me to another one, makes it easy to interview. And what Letha just said, dealing with that, is that can't we, in trying to understand, appreciate, and grow in our respect for others and human rights, if we're open and take a look at that, do we learn some things that we didn't know? Can we possibly get rid of even some fallacies in our own life? And is that part of human rights also?
Absolutely, and building on something you asked before, I believe that human rights are possible, or acceptance of each other is possible if we really truly know who we are and are accepting of ourselves. And I think that's part of it. If you are accepting to someone else and open to what they have to say, then you're always going to be learning something from them and letting go of misconceptions or stereotypes that you may have held on to. So I absolutely agree with that, yes.
And I want to say Jennifer's from North Idaho College. She came down this other end here with the University of Idaho students, but this is all wonderful to have all of you together. I'm going to do a question. I'm going to turn now and go back towards the panel, and no one in particular, but I have a question that's from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., one of my great heroes, and he taught us so much, I think, about policy and law, and he made a real major distinction between just laws and unjust laws that really address this question of human rights. And he said that you have a moral obligation to obey all just laws, but that you have an equally moral obligation to disobey peacefully, nonviolently, civil disobedience, unjust laws. And then he went ahead to give us some guidance. So, but rather than quote that, who on the panel wants to talk about this issue in relation to human rights? What to you is just and what is unjust in public policy and in law, either the high law, Constitution, or ordinary law, statutes? Who wants to carry that with us for a minute? Go first. Our viewers need to know that you didn't know this ahead of time. I didn't tell you what. We can do like a classroom. I can call on someone. Who wants to talk a little bit about that, though? And we refer to that. Maybe you do, Beverly. You're in the law school here. You deal with law all the time. And
can you repeat the question?
Surely, surely. If you had the assignment today to deal with all law in the world, and you were saying, we're going to keep all just law, but we want to get rid of unjust law that treats people a certain way, what guideline can we use to say that this is the way we determine that this is a just law and something else is an unjust law? And it really come out of some things you've already said today, too.
Okay. I think what we can determine what would be a just law is a law that does not restrict a person because of that person's gender, because of that person's religion, or any other type of something that is not of an objective nature. Something that is unjust would be something that is restrictive. When you say that we're not going to do this for this person because that person is a certain color, because that person is a certain age, and because of that person's particular sexual preference. When there's a restriction that restricts a certain class, that has a certain unjust nature to it. So to keep it just, take away anything that would restrict anybody in that law would be a just law.
If Dr. King could speak today, he would say, Beverly, you're right on. What he did, what you're saying is, he said, all just laws treat all of you the same. And that's what you're saying. And when you categorize someone and say they're not going to be accepted because they belong to that particular category or community, he said you treat them differently. And treating people differently is not acceptable for justice and fairness and freedom and equality. So you've really brought us to the end of the program with something very important. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're about out of time. And I'll tell you what we're going to do next week. When you come back, we're going to talk about categories, what Beverly just talked about. We're going to talk about age and disability and sexual orientation, race, color, religion. and have you to address this from the different communities' perspectives. And you might think about before the next show which one of those areas you'd like to talk about. I've had a wonderful time with you. You've really helped our viewers. And ladies and gentlemen, I know you've enjoyed this program as much as I have, and I invite you to be with us again next week when we'll discuss this same issue with these wonderful guests. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
The North Idaho College Public Forum was videotaped live from the studios of Instructional Technology on the campus of North Idaho College for viewing at this more appropriate time. We invite you to join us again next week for another all-new edition of the North Idaho College Public Forum on this public television station. From the College by the Lake, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Local, regional, national, and international guests discussing the issues and topics affecting the way you live are on Forum, the North Idaho College Public Forum, with your host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart.
Welcome to our fourth week in our series titled A Search for the True Meaning of Human Rights, Conversations with College Students. For any of you who's not been with us in the first 3 weeks, we're trying to pursue in depth the question of what is human rights, and we look at it from the perspective of civil rights. Human rights is one more general than the other, and what all are the sub-areas that we wish to address, such as the communities. Today, as we talk about communities, I mean, for example, the community based on race or color or national origin, or the community of age, or the community of gender, of religion, and so forth. We're very, very pleased today to have a group of wonderful college students, highly informed, to address our question from the University of Idaho, Washington State University, Gonzaga University, and North Idaho College. I'm very, very pleased to have all these good people with us, along with the president of North Idaho College, Dr. Michael Burke. At this time, Dr. Burke, I would like to start with you again, as I did last week, and thank you. You've spent the afternoon with us and taping these programs, and you're a very busy person, and you are so patient, and secondly, you're so supportive of the rights of people and protecting our students on our campus and enhancing their learning atmosphere. Dr. Burke, if you would, and I should add that you're a graduate with your doctorate from the University of Texas at Austin and have been our president over the last few months, and we're very, very impressed with your work and your knowledge and your passion and commitment to all of our students and our staff.
Thank you.
From the perspective of what I want to do today, when I say communities, I just introduced it. It's grown, it's expanded as we have introduced different communities to the educational system, for example. There was that unfortunate time when women were looked at in the improper way and could not vote and were not encouraged to have an education. So would you take a couple of minutes to share with us your thought of the advancement we've made and where we're going in education relating to the support of all these communities?
Be happy to. I look around the room and I realize I'm old enough to remember the civil rights movement very vividly, and it was a period in time, from my perspective, that we systematically excluded people from higher education based on race and gender, and it is sort of, I think, part of the darker part of our national consciousness, our national history. I think colleges have a unique opportunity to serve as forums for discussions like this, where we deal with issues that are very close to everyone's hearts. I remember John Kennedy saying, we do all breathe the same air. We do all live on a very small planet, and we all cherish our children's futures. And as a parent of a small child, I have those same aspirations for my child that all parents do. And I think we want our children to live in a world where they are not faced with this kind of systematic exclusion to opportunities. I think colleges have a place they provide a safe haven for those kinds of discussions. I think they also can model the kind of behavior we're talking about. As a good example, perhaps a more recent example, the Americans with Disabilities Act has forced colleges, forced universities, as well as all governmental entities to provide the kind of equal opportunity that is in our Constitution. It did not create disabled students. They are on our campuses now because they systematically had problems finding access to institutions of higher education. Just the simple physical changes that a campus could make provides an enormous educational opportunity for a segment of the population that was perhaps unintentionally but very systematically excluded from higher education. And I think the way we model those kinds of behaviors and show the community that through the simple kinds of behavioral changes that we make, we afford opportunity to others. I think colleges are in a unique position to do that.
And then life changes for the people of that community.
Tens of thousands of people, yes.
When policies change. The first issue we're going to get into about distinguishing communities, and I'd ask you before the program what you want to do. And I'd like to ask you what I forgot the last show, when you come on, introduce yourself, your name and the institution you're with, and then we'll get right into the question. The first area that we're going to talk about is something that's been most recently debated, and both from the perspective of hate crimes and intimidation, as well as the exclusion in laws dealing with housing and jobs, and that has to do with sexual orientation. And Krista, I believe you're going to start for us, and if you would do that, please.
Okay, sure. My name is Christy Erickson. I am a master's degree student at Washington State University studying business administration. And I think the biggest reason that there are these differences in society is because the people who are having problems accepting sexual orientation as they have accepted age and disabilities in the past, and creating laws that treat people justly, is that they are afraid of how their acceptance will reflect upon them, and they haven't accepted it within themselves to be okay with it in order to pass that acceptance on to the community of, let's say, gay people. And I think that a lot of people see gay society as a way that they can pass as heterosexual, because it is sort of a hidden difference, and that once they become aware of the fact that the only way you can choose is when you choose how out to live yourself, like how out you live in society and things like that.
Thank you. And in relation to what you're saying concerning laws or policies, I heard you saying that oftentimes if people have some insecurity in themselves, that increases the chances of being discriminatory. That wouldn't only apply to that particular community, but other communities too. Or am I correct that the more secure you are in who you are and what you believe, the more you can also be inclusive of other groups?
Yes, that's what I believe. Mm-hmm.
Daniel, I believe you're going to introduce yourself and tell us something about this.
My name is Daniel Cezanne. I'm a student over at University of Idaho studying biology, and someday I get into med school with that. I just wanted to say I agree with Chris totally about the, being comfortable with yourself, accepting who you are and understanding who you are and where you come from. And with that, you'll be able to, accept other people for who they are and what they are and where they come from. And I myself, I feel like, I don't totally understand who I am, but I pretty much got a good idea of where I come from, what I am, and, the people that I associate with myself with being culturally wise, And I just think like the key for people to understand, I guess, to come to grips with the gay community. I know it's a really touchy subject everywhere it is. Someone says something, you say the word gay and people just, they freeze up automatically. And, I think the key to, understanding, I guess, or being become comfortable with it would be, like she said, understanding yourself, become comfortable with yourself. Like she's totally, Chris, her sexual orientation is her choice, human rights. Like we were talking about earlier, that's part of human rights, what you want to choose. And I totally see her no different than any other person in this room. And I just feel open-mindedness, like we mentioned earlier.
Inclusion, acceptance.
Yeah, exactly.
Travis, I believe you also want to speak to this. If you'll introduce yourself to us, please.
Travis Taylor, first-year law student at Gonzaga here in Spokane. I think the important difference that I've seen from my own experience is that people who are either don't know anyone who's gay or have never heard of it, they're afraid and it comes from that ignorance. They have to question themselves. Straight man has to look at a gay man and say, wow, he sleeps with men or whatever he does. What does that say about me? And that it's a scary thing. So they get scared, and so they react in a way that scared people do, which is to oppress and to discriminate. And I think the important thing is to not be so afraid and to educate yourself and others, and with that comes acceptance and tolerance.
And elimination of fear.
Yeah.
You're really hitting on something else too. Fear causes people to react and oftentimes in a very prejudiced way.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Larry, if you'll introduce yourself, I know that you want to talk about some other communities, I believe, that particularly disability and age, and if you would do that, please.
My name is Larry Pontius. I'm from the Gonzaga School of Law. Tony, I'd like to address this with a short personal testimony. When I was in my younger 30s, I was a hard rock miner underground, and I was involved in an accident that was with a bulldozer where I was crushed and dragged for a while. As a result of that, I went to 12 hospitals and was bedridden for a couple of years and emerged from that disabled. I then proceeded to go to undergraduate school, and I had to use a cane and various other instruments to help me get through. And I found myself a totally different person. And not only that, but I found myself much older in a sea of younger faces. And I found myself reflecting upon that and how I was treated. And it was interesting to see not only how people looked at me, but how they talked to me, treated me. And I got to thinking, wouldn't the world be much different? Instead of ranking each other with a numerical age ranking, we could treat each other perhaps with a numerical ranking of maturity.
That's such an excellent point. We're all poor because of prejudice. If we eliminate that, then we would learn those kind of things that you're doing. And you students do that. You're much richer because of your dealing with that. Who else wants to deal? I know some people want to deal with something else, but anyone else want to deal with age and disability before I move on to some other students? Anyone want to deal with that? Then we have two new panel members that weren't here last week that are back with us. And we call you, that's what your nickname is, I think. And would you introduce yourself, and would you tell us particularly some of the experiences that you see on human rights, particularly as a student in America from another country?
My name is Delian Dauchev, and I'm a pre-law and political science student in North Idaho College. And what I really want to talk about is the idea of race and ethnic background. There's been so much done in the last years. This is probably one of the biggest areas of legislature, starting with the 14th Amendment and the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And we have so many things going on. What really bothers me is people still thinking of each other in terms of color. He's black, he's white, he's Indian, he's from Bulgaria, he's from Turkmenistan. To me, this is wrong. To me, there is only one color when it comes to race, and this is the color of love, because it comprises all other colors, it comprises all other factors, it comprises age and everything. If we can see each other from the point of love and caring, I believe that any problem concerned with race and ethnic background will magically disappear. I really believe that when we forget about this word, this is a bad word, race, color. Those are words that we should never refer to a person with. Love, care, individuality, and who you are, how you behave, this is the most important in those relationships, and this is what brings about a major change, because laws, they do follow people's hearts and minds. It is not the other way around. History has proven that as far as segregation goes, for example, it had to be about changing people's hearts and then about giving the black people the right to vote or the right to go to school. Law surely helps, but it is people's hearts and minds and the way we see each other what really matters.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to turn to Elizabeth Beechler from the University of Idaho. And thank you for helping us put together the students from there. And would you share with us your perception of a community or communities that you think need addressing in relation to what we're talking about today?
Well, I kind of think the basic point that we're making here is we're all humans, and that's the fact. We're all humans. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter what your religion is. And I think we should all live by the golden rule. Treat people as you want to be treated. If we all did that, we wouldn't have any problems, although this is very idealistic. The problem that I see with is people are extremely ignorant or apathetic. They're afraid. Fear is a big deal here, of learning about different races, different religions, sexual orientation. Personally, I like to put myself with people of all different cultures, all different backgrounds. You'll learn so much more. It's so much more interesting than just sitting back and staying and just thinking that my way is the right way. So
you're preaching a sermon of inclusion, and that's very fine. Another issue we're going to deal with, a community, is gender, and I hope several of you want to deal with that, particularly those on the panel who have experienced problems, women and what's faced them. But I know before we started the show that Josh said that's one thing he particularly wanted to talk about as president of the Untitled College Human Equality Club. Josh, we'll start with you on the issue of gender.
Tony, when Dr. Burke was referring to the crossroads we faced in the 60s, about it was a point where, up to that point, we were openly discriminating and oppressing certain groups in our society, and then we've had great movements. And although I question really the progress of those movements, we now no longer socially openly discriminate particular groups such as African Americans or women. We don't necessarily view women just as sex objects. Although the problem is, and which concerns me and many others, is the fact that we all are here advancing our education to go out into the workforce and to make change. And for example, my girlfriend and I are both studying very hard. The problem is there's a chance that she will get paid less than I will as a professional because of her sex. She goes to a mechanic to get work on her car, and she has been treated poorly because of her sex. And those are issues that sometimes we brush over too fast. And all of these issues, when we're talking about orientation, sexual orientation, or race, or so forth, sometimes we look at, well, it'd be great if we all treat each other with the golden rule, and we no longer do some of these things we did 20 or 30 years ago. But when you get into the inner workings of society, these problems still persist. Men who are dismissed from their jobs at age 44 because they're getting up there in age, supposedly. I mean, these are a lot of problems, and gender is one that is, we're talking about male, female. There's two sexes here, and women are, continuously put down, treated poorly as sex objects, don't get paid equally, and these are problems that government tries to legislate in terms of civil rights, but these really fall, and they can only go so far, and then it comes down to a human rights issue. And we're continuously failing to address that problem.
Thank you. Others on the panel dealing with gender, would you like to speak up and address that question? Jennifer, would you like to?
Sure. I'm Jennifer James. I'm a student at North Idaho College. I grew up in the 60s, so I grew up in the era of women are supposed to stay home and take care of the family, and my mother was very supportive of me not doing that, but going out and doing what I wanted to do with my life. And I discovered pretty quickly that there was, despite encouragement from my mother and various teachers and so forth, there still was a definite difference in the avenues that I could go down at that time, especially without a college degree. And when I first started working a little over 20 years ago, I did not have a college degree, and there was a definite difference in how I was treated. But building a little bit on what Josh said, I've found that I've had to know more about certain things, such as mechanics and things like that over the years, because it is assumed that you don't know anything just because you're a woman. And I have seen it change somewhat, especially in the area of employment. But there is a long way to go, and it is the little things, the insidious little things that are still our downfall. And I think that until the mindset is completely changed that women are completely equal to men as far as abilities and intellect and so forth, that it's not going to change. And I do believe it is changing, but I think we have a ways to go.
Thank you so much. Time is just flying by, and I will make sure we get everyone in. And what I'm going to do now is recognize those who haven't spoken yet and ask you what area would you prefer to give some opinions on or advice or reactions to, and of all this broad spectrum we're talking about of different communities. Beverly, I'm going to start with you, please.
Well, my name is Beverly Gordon. I presently attend Gonzaga School of Law. I'm a first-year student there, and I think, well, basically what I want to touch on is religion. A lot of times people put religion, or will use religion, as a device to discriminate against other people, or basically other people. They would use religion to discriminate against people. And they will take the Bible, per se, and perceive that Bible in a way that enforces their beliefs, instead of just taking it and reading it and comprehending as it is written, basically, and it's very clear. A lot of people will say that, well, God created this person for this type of job, or she or he is supposed to be in this type of position in life. But without realizing that God created all people, black, white, red, or yellow, and that he did not divide us up as races to hurt one another and to hate one another, but to live with one another and to enjoy our differences and not to hate one another because of our differences. I think that's a way in which I disagree, in which religion is being used in America and other nations, of course, but definitely when it comes to discriminating against people. When I know some people would put Christianity, would say, well, I'm a Christian, and a God-fearing Christian doesn't believe in this and doesn't want to do that. Well, I say, if you're such a Christian, who are you to judge another Christian? Who are you to say that person isn't right for what that person is doing, or you're right for what you're doing? I mean, it's all perception when it comes to religion. That's what I'm saying.
You're saying Christianity is based on love rather than condemnation. I hear you saying. Laura, would you share with us some views on one of the communities?
Sure, actually, my name's Laura Soke, and I'm a first-year law student at Gonzaga. And instead of commenting on just one community, you had asked earlier about why is it that some communities are dealt with, whether it's legally or socially, and others seem to be left out. And I think it's because we're all individuals, and certain communities affect certain people. Not all people are disabled, not all people have the same religion, not all people are the same race, and they seem to focus just on that specific community that affects them, and I realize that we are here to educate everybody and make it aware, but I think that we're asking an awful lot of a lot of people when we talk of ignorance and that people aren't aware, that it's a slow process, that we're going to have to understand that not everybody is sympathetic to what the other person is feeling, and that the only way you can do that is to keep an open dialogue like we are today. So.
You're saying something really important that's been learned over a long period of time and conditioned. It's really a long process and changing a lot of times. Twila, can we come to you, please, and share your thoughts?
I was hoping you, because my comment pretty much ties in with what she was saying. I found that being a student at University of Idaho, I have not only become a student, I've become a teacher. Okay. I am a resource that people at the U of I have tapped into to teach other people about my culture. And while I love doing that, I absolutely love doing that. And I love talking about being Native American and where I'm from and what tribe I am and all that stuff. I feel that the responsibility should not just lie with us, the so-called diverse ones. It should lie with other people to reach out and want to learn, make it their responsibility as well. Put it not only on our shoulders, but on theirs as well.
I think your comment's so well done, and I think it's really great to to know your roots and to appreciate them, and we're all richer if we share on that. Thank you for that so much. Letha, let's come to you again.
I guess my main community that I'm involved in would be Hispanic or racial communities. Right now in Idaho, there's a movement going on for migrant workers to get minimum wage. And to me, that's a human right. I mean, everyone deserves the same amount of money for work. And I don't think at all that they're taking away jobs from other people. And another community that I'm definitely aware of is females. I have great concerns for them and where they are going and their self-confidence and how they lose it once they get into junior high and high school, and how much it takes for them to actually succeed, as well as in the Hispanic community. People call it the dropout rate or the push-out rate, and those are the main communities that I see myself working with.
I wish we had time to talk about testing and how you word questions has a tremendous amount to do it, and there's biases built into them depending on which culture writes the test. I wish we could, maybe some other time we can deal with that. Murad, would you like to address?
Yes, I would like to address the issue of ethnicity. As I found out after I came to this country, that Americans tend to be ethnocentric. My name is Murad Khalif and I come from Turkmenistan, and I am one of the international students at NIC. But at the same time, I learned that Americans thought that I was ethnocentric too. I did act that way as well the first couple of years. And as a result, after several years of adapting to the culture and the local community behavior, I learned that one thing a person might have to do in terms of solving this problem is bringing awareness of other nationalities, ethnicities, and introducing yourself to other people. People tend to judge others because of their knowledge, what they grew up with and how they were raised and stuff like that. And in North Idaho in particular, there is...
We're going to have to, I've got 2 minutes, I've got 2 more people to go. I'm so sorry I have to interrupt you. But Ben, let's hear from you with the time we have left, and then end with Alina.
I wanted to speak more broadly about all of them together also. I think it's really important that we learn not to look at each other as gay people or African American people or Native American people, and look at ourselves and each other with love, like Dita was saying, because really what it comes down to is I may disagree with what you do, with how you think, but I never should disagree. I never should lose respect and love for who you are.
Okay, with that, I have to go to Alina.
My name is Eileen Stelza, a student at NIC, and I would like to address the issue of race. As I mentioned, I grew up in South Africa, where I was discriminated because of my skin color, and I got married to a white man, and I was discriminated a lot because of that. And coming to America, I thought things would be much better, but unfortunately it looks like discrimination is still there. So, and what I would like to say is that the first thing we can do is try to educate people about race, about different cultures, so that we can learn to appreciate each other.
Alina, on that, I wish we had more time. Education is a key way to end, and very important. Ladies and gentlemen, our program with our guest today has been about human rights, and I would like to invite you to be with us again next week at this same time. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
The North Idaho College Public Forum was videotaped live from the studios of Instructional Technology on the campus of North Idaho College for viewing at this more appropriate time. We invite you to join us again next week for another all-new edition of the North Idaho College Public Forum on this public television station.